any area of your life that you're not happy with, I can guarantee you that if you give us 30 days to get your sleep in order, it will change that part of your life. I guarantee it.
Are you missing the one factor that could help you be able to burn more fat, boost your health, and have you more productive day in and day out? I took on the changes that you're going to be able to learn from in this episode, and it made a huge impact in my own life. Dr. Micahel Breus, the author of The Power of When, comes on in this episode and gives you the upfront truth for the importance of your sleep and what you need to do about it. Hey, it's Chris Dufay and you're watching Breaking Success. This is the show, this is the movement that is the backstage pass for you to be able to build the body, the business, and the life that you love. In this episode, we go into the cutting edge science that there is the optimal time for you to be able to be having your snacks, having sex, having your workouts, asking your boss for a raise, and it's all about what your chronotype is. We dive into what inspired Dr. Breus to focus on clinical sleep medicine, what a biological chronotype is, why Dr. Breus shifted his focus from assessing and treating his patients to based on chronotypes, and how chronotypes finally can help people realize that there's nothing wrong with them and they just need to be able to make some small changes. We will also pop a link below and you'll find out in this episode that you'll be able to take the free quiz for you to find out what your chronotype is. Dr. Micahel Breus, thank you so much for coming onto the show. I'm pumped to get you on here, and it was brilliant. So just last week, I bumped into you at the Bulletproof conference, and I was just like, oh my God, I couldn't actually believe you were standing right in front of me, because I was like, I think I was a bit of just like, oh my God. Because I was like, I've written about you in my book. Like, I really want to get you onto the show. Like, everything that you've done has actually really impacted me. And like, I can't believe, I don't know how many people I've said, you have to read this book. You have to put this into play.
Thank you.
So I'm a total evangelist. So I am a giddish, fun little schoolboy right now, jumping up and down, being really happy that I've got you on the show. So thank you so much for taking the time out for myself and the listeners.
No, I'm excited. I know you've been a fan, and you've also been telling people about my work, which I can't thank you enough for doing. You know, it's about changing people's lives for the better. So we're both in it together. So I'm excited to, have this interview for your listeners and hopefully answer some of their questions as well as yours.
Awesome. Okay. Now, where I'd love to start this is, how did you get into this world of sleep? What brought you into this?
So it was kind of serendipitous. I actually wasn't planning on becoming a sleep doctor my whole career. So I have a PhD in clinical psychology, and I was doing here in the States to do the clinical psychology residency. You go for a year to some place and you practice, and there's rotations and things like that. And I was actually interested in sport psychology, and there was the best place in the country was, believe it or not, the University of Mississippi Medical Center had this special program just for sports psychology, but only the Harvards and the Yales, and the Princetons got in there. I went to the University of Georgia, top 20 school, but still not Harvard or Princeton or Yale. But they had a side track for sleep. And I had worked my way through graduate school as an electrophysiology tech. So I knew how to put on the EKG and the EEG, and I knew how to run the machines and things like that, which is the same machines they use for sleep. So I said, here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to apply and get into the sleep track, and then I'm going to transfer as soon as I get in. I figured I'm just going to kind of do an end around and beat the system, right? And so I got there, got accepted, and by the third day, I absolutely fell in love with clinical sleep medicine, and I just knew this is where I wanted to be. I mean, Chris, I get the opportunity to help people like that. It's crazy. I mean, treating people with apnea, narcolepsy, insomnia, it's really rewarding. I mean, when you think about it, I mean, if I was a traditional psychologist, then, it could take weeks, months, even years before you see any treatment gains in your patients. Whereas for me, it could be under 24 hours. So it's a lot of fun. It's a great way to understand the body and the mind and what's going on. And sleep's inherently interesting.
Sleep is really interesting, and it's something that's constantly fascinated me, especially diving in and writing this book, which was, I kind of Trojan horses, like, yes, I know people want to lose weight and get in shape, and we're going to make that happen. But really, what's the underlying factors? Why are so many people struggling to lose weight? And so much of it is, how can you actually be a better person? How can you function better on a day-to-day level? And that's where I want to selfishly put myself into the kind of like the hot seat right now, because I know when I started to dive in and learn everything that you were doing, I took the quiz, which I highly recommend, and I'll make sure there's a link below for everybody to be able to do that. But I took the quiz, I started to dive into what your recommendations were. And for myself, it was not to be waking up super early. Like I was kind of like the 4:30 a.m.s, and it was, I'd done that for years, well over 10 years, being a personal trainer. And now I was, transition my business out of being in the gym. I was like, okay, well, I don't need to wake up at 4:30 a.m. And I was always struggling. I never felt like I was really switching on. And then I was like, okay, you know what? I'm going to follow exactly what he says. I'm going to wake up like 6:30, where I felt like I naturally would wake up. And now it's like a light goes off. I'm just up, boom, I'm straight on. And I can't believe how easy this is, just like almost kind of just fed into the rest of my day and fed into the rest of my world as well. So when it comes to the chronotypes, maybe we can jump into it and start to explain this. How did you start to actually perceive this world and start to put it together?
So, I'm a trained clinical psychologist and board certified sleep specialist. So this was part of my training 18, 20 years ago. We've been treating people with what's called advanced sleep phase syndrome and delayed sleep phase syndrome. So when you think of advanced sleep phase syndrome, think of a lion, right? But an extreme lion, somebody who, like you said, wakes up at 4:30 every morning, is exhausted by 7 o'clock at night, that kind of thing. And then the delayed sleep phase are the people who can't go to bed until 2, 3 o'clock in the morning, kind of an extreme wolf, if you will. And so I've been treating people like this my entire career. But a lot of people didn't know about it. And also, a lot of people thought they either had to be an early bird or they had to be a night owl. But the fact of the matter is there's actually multiple types of chronotypes, right? So there's early bird, there's night owl, then there's in between, and then there's bad sleepers, right? Yeah. So what I did was I created 4 categories and then the quiz. And so once somebody figures out what their chronotype is, it actually becomes pretty straightforward because I'm looking at their biology. So we know that hormones are very, very predictable. So we know that right after you wake up, your adrenaline goes up, your cortisol goes up. But if your body is programmed to wake up at, let's say, 5:30, that's all going to happen around 6 o'clock. Whereas if your body is programmed to wake up at 7:30, all that's going to happen at 8 o'clock. And so that gap is what throws people off. And that's why people constantly feel like, I just feel like I'm not in my groove. I'm not where I need to be. I don't have that level of energy that I'm looking for, or they're caffeinating like crazy, or doing energy drinks or what have you. When in fact, if they just knew what the rhythm of their body was and they could follow the rhythm of their body, everything falls into place. Just exactly like what happened to you. You are forcing yourself to be super early. And as soon as you said, I'm going to scale it back just a little, still getting up at 6:30 is fairly, early for some people. And all of a sudden it just clicked. And that's kind of what started to happen. Was I started to notice this in my patients, and I really started to kind of get curious, like, what is this? How does this work? Is there a way that everybody could benefit from it? And that's where the quiz came from, and that's where the book came from.
Do you feel like, why hadn't somebody done this before? Because I was like, oh my God, everything, like so much of what you were talking to, I just felt like you were talking straight to me. I was just like, the waking up at the right time, that it switched. Waiting a little bit later, like how I should actually start to structure my day, even to the point of having that creative spurt kind of like more in the evening. I know now, like say when I get, so I've got 2 daughters, a 4-year-old and 1-year-old at the moment. I know that after the girls go to bed, I can have a really good 30 to 45 minutes of cranking some stuff out. And I totally before be like, oh no, that's not for me. Or like, oh no, I've got to be waking up super early. Like I'm a person, do you know what I mean, that's got to be able to achieve. And that's the stuff that you've got to do. I've got to run through walls, where it's not like that at all. So after taking the quiz, how do you help somebody then determine, do you know what I mean, how do we start making some changes? And what are the small changes that you see that kind of like have the big lever points?
Sure. So first of all, it's always so fascinating because when people take the quiz, they're going to fall into one of these 4 categories. Now, the early bird is called a lion, right? And these are kind of like my COOs, my kind of go-getters. These are managers. They get up early, but they have social problems because they want to go to bed at 8 o'clock at night, right? My bears are kind of in the middle. That represents almost 50% of the population.
Wow.
But what I've discovered recently, and this isn't even in the book yet, is I've got early bears and I've got late bears. So even if you're in the bear category, I do have some people that have a tendency to want to wake up early, and I have some people that have a tendency to want to go to bed late. But generally speaking, bears like to get up around 7, they go to bed around 10:30, something like that.
Yeah.
Wolves are my night owls. That's me. So I never go to bed before midnight. I just can't. Like, my brain just doesn't do that. And then are my insomniacs, right? And so these are the ups and downs, the irregular sleep schedule, highly intelligent, type A personalities, but a little bit on the neurotic side, can't really get things where they want to go. So once you figure out what category you're in, what I then did was I said, well, what would a day in the life of this character be if they followed it exactly? And so there's a chapter in there for each one of the categories. Now, don't get me wrong. I don't want anybody out there to try to incorporate every single thing in the book in the first week. It'll never work. It'll never work, right? But so here's what I tell everybody to do is the first thing you should do is look at your sleep schedule, right? Because it's all based on you getting to sleep and waking up at the right time for you genetically. That's the thing that most people don't understand is this is actually based on genetics. This is not, oh, I came up with an idea and I'm going to, put it out there type of thing. This is actually based on about 25 years of study of genetics. Now, these weren't my studies. People have been studying circadian rhythms and chronotypes literally since the 70s. Wow. So we're talking like almost 40-something years of study here. And so what I did was I aggregated material. I put it together in a way that makes it easy for people to digest and effectively do things. So, historically, we might use circadian rhythms and say, well, here's when you should go to bed. And that's kind of what I did, but I took it a step further. And I said, well, what if I could figure out when was the best time to have a cup of coffee, or when was the best time to have sex, or, when was the best time to have breakfast? Would that be valuable information for people? And it turns out that it is. But I'm not the only person by any stretch of the imagination who's done this. I mean, we've got over 300 studies quoted in the book from, that's at least 300 authors out there that have been out there doing research and things like that. And there have been a couple of popular press books that have tried to address it, but I just don't think the science was there yet. Now that we've got the science where we do, there's some really cutting edge stuff that's going on from a circadian rhythm standpoint. I mean, just as an example, there's now protocols for chemotherapy, right? So people who have cancer who are going through chemotherapy, if we deliver the chemotherapy at a very particular time in their circadian cycle, we can use less chemotherapy and it's more effective. Wow. Just think about that for a second. Wow. Like, we're affecting cancer treatment with circadian rhythms. That's fucking cool.
That's really cool. That is real. Okay. So the way that I've been trying to consume this and help coaching clients as well with the kind of spectrum is obviously, okay, we know the starting of the day is really important. And there's so much talk about like the morning routine. How do you get the day going? I kind of like always flip this around after a few things that I stumbled upon and say, no, it's more of a wind down routine that I find is best coming into it, then to best set yourself up for the day moving forward. How do you help people go into having quality sleep?
So it's about consistency, right? And it turns out that it's consistency in the wake up time that's more important than consistency in the bedtime. Okay. All right. Because look, let's be honest. If it's Friday night, you probably don't want to go to bed at 10 o'clock. You want to stay out with your friends or go to the movies, go to a dinner, what have you, right? But your wake up time can maintain a level of consistency. Now, I know it would stink, right? You're going to stay up until 2 o'clock in the morning with your friends. And if you normally wake up at 6:30, yep, I want you to wake up at 6:30 on Saturday and 6:30 on Sunday. Because the more consistent you keep your internal biological clock, the more all of these functions know exactly when to start and when to stop. If you even sleep in by 30 or 40 minutes on Saturday morning, you actually will shift your whole biological clock. So if you stay up late on Friday, sleep in on Saturday, stay up late on Saturday, sleep in on Sunday, you've basically put yourself 2 time zones away from where your brain is.
Wow.
So you really have to be careful. It's really about consistency of the wake up time, even more so than the bedtime. Once people figure out their chronotype and then figure out what their wake up time needs to be, and then subsequently their bedtime, the next one I attack is coffee. There's just so many people that drink coffee in the mornings. I want them to get the most benefit from the coffee. So here's where it gets really weird. So in order to wake up or to pull your brain out of a state of unconsciousness, you need two big hormones. You need adrenaline and cortisol. Those are the ones that kind of have to be up and out for you to wake up and kind of start your day. Well, if you look at the strength of cortisol and adrenaline, and you look at the strength of caffeine, it's like comparing cocaine to weak tea, right? It's like they're not even comparable, you know? And I think you saw me, you know, talk about this on stage at Bulletproof. It's like if you just waited 90 minutes after you open your eyes, just 90 minutes, as the cortisol begins to go down, then if you add caffeine, then it will actually help lift it and give you a little bit more energy. Yes. Caffeine works really well in small doses multiple times throughout the day. Now, there's also a limit. You don't want to be drinking a whole lot of caffeine past about 2 or 3 in the afternoon because it's got a half-life of between 6 and 8 hours. And so what we don't want is we don't want it affecting your ability to fall asleep. So if you stop at 2, then by 10, most of it's out of your system. You should be able to fall asleep. So we really, you know, you're looking at 90 minutes after wake up till about 2 p.m. That's sort of the caffeine zone, if you will. And that's really step 2 for most people is get the wake up time right, then figure out when you should have caffeine. Now, a lot of people are going to be like, hold on a second, Michael. You're telling me to wake up at a particular time and you're not going to let me have coffee for 90 minutes. How am I going to function? Like, how am I going to wake up? Like, what do I need to do? So it turns out that in your breath, when you're breathing at night, the humidity in your breath, you actually breathe out almost a full liter of water each night. So you actually wake up dehydrated. The best thing you can do is not drink coffee because caffeine's a diuretic. It makes you pee, right? You should be drinking, a 16, 18 ounce glass of water. I mean, you can see I've got my green smoothie going here this morning, loaded with water. That's the first thing that kind of passes my lips. The second thing people should be doing is getting sunlight. So it turns out that sunlight turns off the melatonin faucet in your brain.
Yes.
So the best thing a person can do is the alarm goes off or they wake up naturally, reach over, grab that bottle of water, swing your legs over and sit and drink and breathe. Okay. People need to breathe. They start their day and they just go, go, go. The body really needs to kind of kick in gear. Then walk over to the window and get some sunlight or walk outside and get some sunlight. If you can get between 10 and 15 minutes of sunlight within 30 minutes of you waking up, you will really reset that circadian clock and you will find you'll have a ton of energy, really ready to meet the day and kind of get yourself going.
That's awesome. Okay, that is something I'm going to include as well. I really, really like that.
It's fun.
I found that it's funny looking at this. The waking up, having the water is something I've just been doing religiously for the last few years now, which I highly recommend because I've always found that I don't need that coffee. That coffee hit doesn't really come until more of a 10 a.m.
Exactly.
Where I feel like, okay, and then I'm cruising through. Even though I've done like the genetic testing before and I know that I'm a fast caffeine metabolizer, and then I'm still enjoying being able to do it, though I know I shouldn't be doing too much caffeine just because I don't want to be overdoing it.
Right.
When you say quantity, I know we can get a little bit into the weeds. How much are you saying caffeine in the doses multiple times is like?
So what I would say is you want to keep it to, between 6 and 8 ounces of drip coffee. So what we're looking at is a total caffeine consumption in a day of hopefully less than about 200, 250 milligrams, right?
Gotcha. Yes.
So you really want to try to keep that down because, again, caffeine does have a fairly extended half-life depending upon if you're a quick metabolizer or not. So it can definitely affect your sleep. Now, I guarantee you, by the way, there's somebody who's watching or listening who's going to say, sleep doctor, he doesn't know what he's talking about. I can have caffeine right before bed and fall right to sleep, right? That might be true, but if I stuck electrodes on your head and I looked at the quality of the sleep that you're getting, here's what I can almost guarantee you is caffeine is not allowing you to get into the deeper stages of sleep. Remember, there are 4 stages of non-REM sleep, 1 stage of REM sleep, all of which are important. But if you don't get the deep sleep, you don't feel physically restored and refreshed. And that's one of the things that caffeine prevents if taken too close to bedtime.
Okay, this is awesome. I'm really happy you bring up the whole REM sleep. I was wearing the Aura ring. I actually took it off just before the shower before. Anyway, so I've only had it for about 5 or 6 nights so far, and I'm just geeking out, diving into everything and really making sure this is good. And it's great that I'm having this conversation at this time. There's been a few nights where my REM sleep hasn't been fantastic at all. So if we know, obviously there's quantity and quality. Okay, we know the quantity and we can talk about that for sure, but let's really talk into the quality of the sleep. How do we take some steps to make sure that we're getting really good quality?
So it's interesting. So it has to do with consistency and finding your chronotype.
Yes.
And so once you know when your body wants to sleep, if you allow it to sleep during that period of time, it will naturally get the amount of each of the stages that it needs, right? So your body is self-regulating. The problem is it has a specific start time and a specific stop time based on the PER3 gene in your genetics. So if you don't follow that, that's when you get shortchanged. So let me give you an example. It's a lot like a baseball game, okay? So if you show up at a baseball game, let's say the game starts at 8 o'clock and you show up at 9:30, they don't start the game over for you, right? You show up and you're in the third inning, right? Same holds true with sleep, is if you decide to go to bed later than your body wants to, the process is started, okay? And so what ends up happening is you miss out on that first section of restorative sleep. You might get your REM sleep that night, but you won't get your deep sleep and restorative sleep. Same holds true as if you wake up too early, right? So, and that's partly what was going on with you. You were waking up at 4:30 in the morning. You were probably missing that last bout of REM sleep because the biggest bout of REM sleep is the last one of the night. It's really interesting because deep sleep, stage 3, 4, there's a lot of it in the front of the night, and that's the physical restoration. REM sleep, there's a lot of it in the back of the night, and that's the mental restoration. And so Mother Nature did it a good way. Basically, she said, we want the body to heal first, because if in 4 hours, this individual needs to get up and go do something, we need the body to be able to physically do it. The mental isn't going to be as important in the long run, but generally speaking, if you don't get enough sleep, you're going to start to feel brain fog, you're going to start to lose your memory, you're going to start to become more cranky, all of the things that you need REM sleep to help you process through.
Awesome. Okay, fantastic. Is there any other hacks or any other things you recommend when it make sure to getting the good quality sleep?
So there's a couple things to think through. So we talked a little bit about caffeine, but alcohol is another one, right? So alcohol is the #1 sleep aid in the world. More people use alcohol to help them fall asleep than anything else. And it may not be conscious. It might not be somebody saying, ooh, I'm going to have 2 shots of whiskey before I go to bed. It's going to be more like, oh, I have a beer or, a couple of beers or a couple of wines with dinner. And then dinner goes until 8:30, 9 o'clock at night. And then they hop in bed at 10 and they wonder why they're not sleeping so well, right? So alcohol, a couple of things about alcohol. #1, there's a really big difference between going to sleep and passing out, right? So let's get that part straight, right? And so you want to limit the amount of alcohol that you ingest on any given day. And don't get me wrong, red wine's good for you, and I get all that part, but you really want to keep it to about 2. Yeah. 2 glasses of beer, wine, spirits, what have you, because once you pass 2, that's when it affects deep sleep, okay? That's #1, keep it to 2. #2 is you want to give yourself approximately 1 hour per alcoholic beverage for your body to metabolize through the alcohol, because what happens is alcohol is a diuretic, so it makes you wake up and pee. And #2, it puts you into the lighter stage of sleep and makes it easier to arouse. So you want to, if you have 2 drinks and you stop at 8, then you don't want to go to bed until 10, giving yourself those 2 hours to be able to allow you to get that better quality sleep. The third way, which is something that you talk about all the time, is exercise. The data is very, very consistent. If you exercise on a regular basis, you will sleep better. And even for people who don't exercise regularly, what they'll notice is that, let's say they only exercise like twice a week, they will notice on the nights that they exercise, they sleep a lot better. So this should be a mental trigger for people. And by exercise, I'm not saying you got to go run a marathon here. I'm talking 20 minutes walk the dog, park your car far away from the office and walk across the parking lot type of thing. Just getting some level of exercise. And if you can do it outside and get the sunlight, it's perfect.
Now, when it comes to the importance of sleep, let's say a listener right now is tuned in and go, okay, this all sounds fantastic, but they're just not sold on really making the changes to make sure that they have great quality of sleep. Because I can't believe how much of an evangelist I am when it comes to the importance of sleep, just because I've seen how it actually has such a great flow and effect through life and being able to be the best version of ourselves at the end of the day.
Of course.
So when it comes to the importance of sleep and the question of why, how would you answer that?
When it comes to sleep, why should they get better sleep?
Yeah.
Sure. So here's the thing is, if you pick any area of your life, literally any area of your life, and you're looking to improve that. Maybe it's your memory, maybe it's your finances, maybe it's your relationship, maybe it's your physical health. I can show you data where sleep affects every single one of those things, right? It affects every organ system, every disease state. There is literally nothing you do that you don't do better with a good night's sleep. And so any area of your life that you're not happy with, I can guarantee you that if you give us 30 days to get your sleep in order, it will change that part of your life. I guarantee it.
Awesome. And when you say 30 days, what does that 30 days entail? How can we kind of get a grasp on that?
So 30 days is a little bit arbitrary, but it takes people sometimes to figure out what their sleep schedule is. Yeah. But I would honestly tell you, usually within a week or 10 days, most people, once they've locked into that sleep schedule, they really start to reap the benefits very, very quickly. 30 days is good because I like, especially for women, to go through an entire menstrual cycle. We know that menstrual cycles have a very big effect on sleep. Some women, I actually give them different bedtimes based on where they are in their menstrual cycle. So just before their menstrual cycle, I might have them going to bed a little bit earlier because of all of the things that are hormonally going on with their system. Whereas after their menstrual cycle, I may tell them they can actually go to bed later. So I'm probably the only sleep specialist in the country that's ever done something like that.
Wow. That's really interesting. So the differences between, say, like the luteal phase and the follicular phase of the menstrual cycle, wow, okay, that's really cool.
Well, think about it, right? So if you look at the luteal phase versus the follicular phase, you look at differences in progesterone and differences in estrogen. Well, we know that estrogen and progesterone will make you feel sleepy or make you feel alert. And so as those change, you can't force it, right? So if you tell a woman to go to bed and her estrogen is through the roof, she's never going to sleep.
Yes.
Right? And so that's just frustrating, gets her pissed off. So once she understands that and can work with that ebb and flow, it works out really, really well.
That totally makes sense now, because I'm just thinking about like recommendations I've had with female clients before, like say the difference between follicular and luteal phases is, do you mean that depending on which phase, they can maybe handle higher intensity exercise, maybe they're more carbohydrate tolerant and insulin sensitive, but the sleep, that's something I've been missing and really needs to put in. Okay, I've got some homework for that. That's really good. Okay, excellent. Okay, now, what do you recommend when somebody finds out what chronotype they are? What are the steps that we should start to go through to make sure that we start actually encapsulating what we need to?
So step one is always change your sleep. Get your sleep lined up. Step two is really depend. And I don't want people to, in each chronotype in the book, I actually tell you what the thing is you should change next, because I have people start out the first week just doing their sleep, and then the second week I add one or two activities. In the third week I add more, and it depends upon the chronotype. Because like as an example, I'm a wolf. Okay, so I'm a night person. I would never try to figure out my exercise time, because I hate exercise, because all wolves hate exercise. We don't like it. Now, don't get me wrong. I actually love exercise, but I'm just using it as an example, right? Is because I'm a night person. And so my brain doesn't really get going until 10:30, 11 o'clock in the morning. And so I have to work out much later in the day, but that's not going to be a priority for me. Priority for me is I can't get to work on time because I'm a wolf. I'm a night person. So that might be a higher category of activity that I want to do, versus a lion who is exercised. They've woken up at 6, 5 in the morning. They've already done their exercise for the day, so it's not going to be nearly as important to them. So the steps that we take will be different based on each chronotype, based on what their issues are, what their priorities are. But generally, I start with sleep, then I move to coffee, then I move to exercise and food.
Awesome. Okay, that's absolutely brilliant. I was joking with my wife last night. I was like, you know what? I could probably just do door-to-door sales, selling your book, going through this stuff. I love it. I think it's so important. But this has been absolutely awesome. I really appreciate it. It's really been able to make a huge impact on me. And that's why I just knew it's why I wrote about you in the book as well, but obviously being able to get you on, I'm going to be able to change some things. I want to be able to add some things now as well, which I really appreciate. I recommend for the listener as well, click the link below to take the quiz as well. How else do we find out more about you, Michael, and what you're doing?
Yeah, so people can always find me at my website, which is thesleepdoctor.com. And then every Wednesday, depending upon what part of the world you're in, at 7 a.m. Pacific time, I do something called Wake Up Wednesday. So I do a Facebook Live from my Facebook page where I actually answer questions live. Now, if people want to go to the Facebook page and post questions, but they're not going to be able to see it live, don't worry. I actually have a timestamp and I tell you where I answered your question.
Awesome.
And it also stays on there. You know how Facebook is, it keeps stuff on or whatever. So you'll be able to find your question actually answered by me. I answer about 30 to 40 questions every Wednesday, depending upon, how many people and that kind of stuff. So that's definitely something new that people would enjoy. Also, going over to the sleep doctor and then taking the quiz. I think you get a lot out of the quiz. I think you find it a lot of fun.
Totally. Personally, that's where I started as well after I first discovered. I don't know where I first listened to yourself, but anyway, I took the quiz and then obviously everything rolled on from there.
Yeah.
Michael, thank you so much for taking the time out. I really appreciate it. I am a huge evangelist. Make sure the listener right now, please go click the link below, at least take the quiz because obviously your eyes are going to open up as well. And there's some really easy steps as well. If you've got any questions, make sure that you do comment below with them as well. Michael, have a fantastic day. I'm looking forward to talking to you soon.
Thanks again. Thanks for all of your support. And everybody out there needs to check out Chris's new book and all the stuff that he's doing. It's amazing work. You're gonna get better fast.
Now, this is where I want to make sure that you get the most out of being here, and I want to hear from you. So if you've enjoyed this episode, click like, and make sure I can send you the new episodes each and every week. Be sure to subscribe and hit that notification bell. Also, I really want to make sure that I'm giving you exactly what you need. So comment below. I want to know what you're going to take away from this episode. And the best conversations after every episode always happen in the Breaking Success Tribe. I'll pop a link below for you to join the free group so you get access to the guides, the live streams. I'm in there answering your questions personally each and every day. Plus you get all the episodes as well. So thank you so much for being here and joining us. I'm really looking forward to seeing you in the next episode.